I believe that we are live. Greetings, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I hope that everyone is having an easy time logging in for our webinar this evening or morning or wherever you happen to be in the world. We're truly international today as we go through our webinar on Heaven and Earth Qigong, Heal Your Body and Awaken Your Qi. My name is Paul Palante. I am the Center Director of Energy Arts at our Longmont Training Center in Colorado. I'm real happy to be here tonight. I'm a big fan of Heaven and Earth myself. And I'm actually very happy to be joined tonight by Paul Cavell, who we'll introduce here in just a second. But before we do, let's just run a quick sound check for you guys out there. Are you able to hear me okay? There's a little chat button in the bottom. So if you can hear us and we're coming through loud and clear, by all means, let us know. We want you to be able to know, to hear what we're doing. Hey, all right. We're seeing lots of people tuning in here. So thanks for joining us, guys. And while you're letting me know that you can hear us, please let me know where you're tuning in from. Like I said, we're all over the world tonight, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are. So let me know where you're tuning in from. And we'll just give people another minute or so to get online before we get rolling. Looks like we've got a lot of people online for this webinar. We were concerned we might go over our limit. We're limited to 1,000 on this webinar, and I think we're going to be right at the edge. So I'm glad that all you guys are with us. I see California, Oregon, Santa Fe, Greece. Oh, we got some Greece, Australia, North Carolina, Spain. This is wonderful. Boston. Hey, guys. Truly international community out there, and we're happy to have each and every one of you on this very exciting call. I'm really happy to be joined tonight by the instructor of the Heaven and Earth Qigong online program. Paul Cavell is here with us tonight. Paul's been studying Qigong and Tai Chi and Bagua for over 30 years. He is the principal teacher of the Tai Chi space in London, England. And he is also a senior instructor under Bruce Frantzis in the Energy Arts system. So thanks a ton for being here tonight, Paul, and welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. How are we doing?
Yeah, and just so you guys know, feel free to ask questions and things in the chat. We'll be addressing some of those as we go through this webinar. So if something strikes your fancy, then by all means, go ahead and put it in the chat as we go along. So, Paul, we got a little dual action here. We got the power team tonight. It's the name so nice, we used it twice here, but hopefully that won't confuse folks too much. I know that you poured your heart and soul into this program and that Heaven and Earth is a very important practice for you. What was it that made you want to do this program, that you thought it was so important to do this program?
Well, there's a few things here. First of all, I noticed that Bruce had put out a lot of programs and he'd never really done anything of any depth with Heaven and Earth. So that was the first thing. I felt it was a hole in our system. And also, Heaven and Earth is a very simple movement and it allows you to really penetrate into the layers of Qigong. And so for me personally, I'm always interested in the depth of the movements. And it's the depth of the movements that gives these supposed benefits. And a lot of the time people talk about form and then they talk about Qi. And it's like there's these two things, but they don't really come together. It's like what links the Qi to the form? And that's the Qigong. And so Heaven and Earth gives you the real possibility of going through those layers and really linking the outside form to the internal Qi development. And so for me, that's quite an important aspect of training. And it kind of grew from there.
Yeah, wonderful. Hey, speaking of training, just so you guys know, Paul is actually joining us from Western China right now. He's on a training trip there and absorbing some of the local culture. So we really are all over the globe today as we're doing this particular webinar. So tell me a little bit about how you learned this material and what your experience was with doing Heaven and Earth Qigong and how it changed your practice?
Yeah, for me, it was like the second real Qigong set I trained. The first one was Energy Gates. And Energy Gates does something very important for your body. But Heaven and Earth takes it to the next level. So when I started getting into Heaven and Earth, and that was actually 1989, I started learning Heaven and Earth. And I noticed immediately that it gave me the ability to focus on specific internal content. This is one of the great things about Heaven and Earth. You have a single movement that you repeat again and again and again, and therefore you can go into the layers. Whereas most of our other sets we have various movements. Like with Energy Gates, you have standing and sinking chi, dissolving, then the cloud hands, and then into the swings and the spine stretch. Dragon and Tiger, again, a series of movements. God's Plane in the Clouds, a series of movements. Same with Tai Chi, Bagua, Xingyi. It's this movement, then that movement, and another movement. And for these things, people stay more on the surface of their bodies, more with the choreography. Heaven and Earth gives you that doorway in. And therefore, due to the injuries that I'd had from training hard at martial arts and other things, accidents I'd had, it allowed me to access the layers of my body that actually contained those problems. And it helped me to bring that stuff out of my body and help my body to heal. And this is why I like that label, Healing Qigong for Heaven and Earth. It really does what it says on the tin, as we say.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and the name of tonight's webinar, Healing Your Body and Awakening Your Qi. You mentioned that you had sustained some pretty serious injuries at one point in time in your life. So if you could just let me know how you were using some of the Heaven and Earth material to return to a better state of being.
Yeah, because you see, when you have impact injuries, what happens is your body gets torn. And you find this also, it doesn't even have to be a major trauma. If you do weights, if you run regularly, if you do hard sports, you get all these minor tears in your soft tissue all over your system. And those tears heal with scar tissues. Now, scar tissue is much harder, much more dense than normal body tissue. And so your body doesn't really have the springiness, the suppleness, and the elasticity that it had before those damages came into your system. And so those knots that you have in your body, they literally, the tissues move. And so the tissue can stretch to that point, but then the knot moves as a unit. And so you need to develop fine motor control in order to go into and stretch open those knots. And Heaven and Earth gives you that ability to focus in, find those spots, open them up, and release those tensions and make that scar tissue more elasticated.
So you would actually absorbed one of those injuries then? You had like an impact injury of your own?
Various injuries. In my very early 20s, 2021, I sustained numerous injuries from doing Kung Fu, doing excessively hard stretching. In our school, the people stretched your body when the teacher considered you weren't putting in enough effort. Gotcha. And they would literally pull your legs apart and they'd pull your arms apart. And so you see, that's the first time I felt the ligaments in my knee go, was when someone was overly stretching my leg. So I had various issues from that, but then later I had a motorcycle accident where a car hit me in the rear. I was on a motorcycle and I was turning right in England. That means you're going to cross the lane of traffic. I'd gone down into first gear because I'm waiting for the gap, and the car come up behind me and sent me flying. So after that, I had a lot of pain. I had a lot of problems with walking, moving, and the Western medical profession basically told me I would need a stick to walk with, and there wasn't much they could do. No broken bones, no internal bleeding. You're out of our range. And so I started looking. And initially I got into the Tai Chi and that helped. But then the Tai Chi aggravated the deeper traumas in my body. And it was definitely the heaven and earth that gave me access to releasing those traumas. So for me personally, it was a very interesting and important piece of my training.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many people out there, it's hard to meet anyone anymore who hasn't been in some sort of serious car accident or some sort of spill that has thrown them for a loop or has back pain of some
kind. For
kind.
sure. Yeah. Or fallen down the stairs or tripped over and fell awkwardly and torn a ligament or sprained an ankle or something. And we carry these injuries, and then those injuries, they prevent the over everything else from functioning optimally. And the whole nervous system closes the body down when you have these injuries. And if you don't do something to open up those injuries and release them from the body, they compound over time. And I often reflect on what would my body be like if I hadn't done the internal arts. I had a limp at 24. I couldn't squat. I'm 56 now, and my body's in a better condition than it was at that age. So it's like, where would I be now with that compound interest on 30 years? So yeah, I'm very happy I put in the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, yeah. So it's kind of a funny name, Heaven and Earth Qigong. What's that all about? Why is it called Heaven and Earth Qigong?
Well, there's a lot of different aspects to that. Chinese names are not about a single thing, okay? So if you're looking at the overall view, then Heaven and Earth is about tapping into the natural energies of Earth and Heaven, bringing them into the body, unifying and balancing those energies, and getting those energies to flood the body with life-sustaining Qi. So that's kind of the overview. If you look at the human body, from the lower dantian, which is a couple of inches below your navel, from the lower dantian down is considered earth in the physical body, and from the lower dantian up is considered heaven. And so unifying the upper and lower bodies into one piece is where you begin. So once you have the body unified as a unit, then you can work in through the layers and go in through the layers from your outer casing through to your core. And then you start growing your Qi to the point where your Qi can expand outside of you and connect to the natural environmental energies around you. And so these are kind of developmental stages that you go through with Qigong. And Heaven and Earth has many. So it's a big bag of tricks, we like to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So when someone's first starting Heaven and Earth Qigong, what are some of the first benefits they see when they begin their practice?
Okay, now this is my personal opinion. Generally in learning Qigong, the first and major hurdle is overcoming your conditioned use of your muscles in your body. There's a certain thing, a term is reciprocal inhibition, which means that one group of muscles tenses while the other group of muscles relax. And then they switch roles. The second group of muscles tense while the first group relax. So to bring the arm towards you, the biceps contract and bring the arm in, and to take the hand away, the tricep contracts to take the hand away. But what this does is it builds a residual level of tension in the body. And Qigong breaks that habit. So the first thing is learning how to move your muscles without tension, without that tension response, without reciprocal inhibition being the main event. And therefore you start to release the layers of tension from the body, and you start to link the body up. And that alone will start to allow the blood to circulate strongly. It will allow the nerves to release. It will allow the Qi to circulate and develop. And you will start to gain more vitality, all sorts of things. It can target very easily the neck, shoulders, upper back, upper chest area. And so people start to experience these areas releasing their pain, their stagnancy, and becoming freer, more alive, becoming more relaxed, more comfortable in their body. And then to take that a little further, the longer you work with it, the deeper you will go in, both in towards the pelvic area, the quad, the legs, and start to engage and release tensions in those areas, and then again through to your core, because you always want to release surface tension before you try to disturb and release the deeper tensions. Because if not, those surface tensions contain that deeper tension. It has no way out of the body. But if you release the surface tensions first, then as you access and move those deeper tensions, they have a clear pathway out of the body. So superficial tension, neck, back, upper back, shoulders, this area, and just training the body to move in a very relaxed and smooth fashion.
I'm actually glad that you brought up the upper back and spine there. We just had a question from KT, who's in our chat right now, and she was just asking about, or I'm not sure he or she, but they say they have trouble doing Tai Chi because it's aggravating to their neck and their back. It sounds like a lot of what you're talking about is very advanced, but Heaven and Earth Qigong is also really good for people who are just getting rolling too. So is it a place that people can just start in their training? Is it a good starting point?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting fact. And just to touch on what KT was saying there, I also found that with my Tai Chi. It aggravated my injuries. It kind of prodded them, but it didn't actually get them out. And that's because the technology, the technology that I had embedded in my body wasn't available in the Tai Chi. It was too complex. It was too difficult. Heaven and Earth is a much easier form to learn. And again, because of that repetition, every time you go around and around and around, you can hone in and focus on that specific point. Sometimes you're putting in too much effort. Sometimes you're putting in not enough effort. And you can hone and refine your practice in order to put in the right effort to target and release those spaces that are stuck, bound, and uncomfortable. Now, could you just draw my mind back to that second? I'm a little bit on jet lag here. I only got
absolutely. Just that, like some people are asking here in the chat about whether it's a good point for them to start,
okay,
like
cool.
You know, as beginning practitioners.
Yeah. Well, there's a few Qigongs that are in the more beginning, and there's a few that are in the more advanced. Heaven and Earth is quite unique because it bridges both. It's very easy to get in the door. You can just learn it with bending and stretching the soft tissues. You can get in, you can start getting benefits. You can start connecting the body, improving blood chi circulation, removing or releasing trauma, all this kind of stuff, a very basic level. And yet then when you layer in all the more advanced techniques, it can take you into some pretty advanced realms. And so it's a really good bridge. Yes. Yeah. It's a really good bridge. And I'd like to say an absolute essential component for things like Xing Tai Chi and Bagua. It's not until Heaven and Earth became really in my body that I could access those depths and those layers of Qigong in my Tai Chi or my Bagua. Yes. It's really the shorter route. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So for all of our Tai Chi practitioners that are tuning in tonight, it's a great way to unlock a lot of what's inside of their Tai Chi practice or their Bagua practice or Xingyi.
Yeah, because again, it's like you get lost in the choreography. Which way am I turning? Where am I stepping? Which way am I facing? What's this arm doing? What's the other arm doing? What's the next movement? And so your mind gets lost in the choreography and the form and everything. And so if you embody any Qigong through a very simple Qigong process, you find it just naturally comes alive in your Tai Chi. It just shows up in your Bagua. And then, of course, you can start, when you notice it comes alive, It will come alive in a particular movement or a few movements. And then you can say, oh, well, it's here and it's not there. And then you can search for the dead spots and you can make it more continuous. Mm. And this is what most people don't get. A lot of Qigongs are made in this way. In this movement, you do this thing. In this movement, you do another thing. And in a third movement and so on, you do another thing again. And with heaven and earth, it's the same movement. So you go over this thing a dozen times, and then you focus on another thing and you go into that half a dozen or a dozen times, and you go in through the layers. And once that becomes embodied, and embodiment means you don't need to think about it. It's your body will do it by itself. Then you practice a Qigong form or your Bagua palm changes or your Xingyi fists. And then you notice it comes alive. It's available to you. But if you go through the process of trying to go through all those layers in each move of a Tai Chi form or each fist or each palm change, it takes forever to go through. And most people just don't have the stamina or the mental focus to actually achieve that.
Absolutely. So actually, the last comment, just as you were wrapping up what you were saying just now, was from Kin, who is down in Mexico. He was saying there aren't any instructors for Qigong where he is in Mexico. And I'm just wanted to kind of point out that that's one of the big reasons why this course was created, the Heaven and Earth Qigong online course. It's 8 weeks, but a lot of people don't have access to this material at the depth that you're talking about. So if you can just talk a little bit about the reason that you did the course to benefit some of those folks who may not have a teacher.
Yeah. I mean, this is why we do the online course. It's to give people access to that material, and it's to allow you to work with that material to the best of your ability without actually having a teacher. Now, I must say that having a live teacher is the best. There's no doubt about it. Getting personal corrections and all the rest of it, fantastic. It can move you on quicker. But if you don't have access, then an online course can really open you up to what is possible, and it can teach you some of the material that allows you to access and actually develop it to some degree. Now, for me personally, I'm not interested in just showing videos of, oh, this is what it is. The purpose of this course, it is a systematic build process to take you through the specific layers of the Gung and the specific component build of you need to do A and then B and then combine them and then add C to that and learn D and add it in so that you can actually build that process. Now, it is billed as an 8-week course. We're presenting it as an 8-week course. That gives you an overview, and that allows you to go through it and get an understanding of what is in heaven and earth. And then if you really want to do it, you can spend the next year or two trawling through that material and practicing those exercises that we show in there. Some are solo exercises, some are partner exercises. And the purpose of those exercises, it is to bring alive specific Gung content. So it's not just, oh, this is heaven and earth, and you bend here and you stretch here, or you close here and you open there. We actually take you through the process of how to bend and stretch, how to open and close, how to lengthen, how to circulate the chi, and where the chi is meant to be going at what point in the form. So you're not left with this, well, I think there's something meant to be happening here. No, there's a very specific and precise technology that's in heaven and earth, and we take you through that process. That is the purpose of the course.
Great. And so the movements themselves, like you're mentioning, it's a very simple container. It's just 2 movements. It's not a very, like you said, not a lot of choreography. So it's all about what's happening on the inside. So easy to learn, but you can take it as deep as you like when you're going through the Gung.
Yeah, or as deep as you're prepared to go is more. And it's a single movement. It's just got two parts, the microcosmic orbit and the macrocosmic orbit, which is basically circulating chi throughout the entirety of your body, the macrocosmic orbit, or circulating chi through the governing and conception vessels of the torso, neck, and head, which is the microcosmic orbit. And therefore, the goal is to move that chi and mobilize that chi and develop that chi. The movements and the content is the vehicle through which you develop that chi. And so, yes, once you've spent a few weeks doing heaven and earth, you've basically got the movements down, and then you can get below the skin. And this is interesting for me because when I teach, I do a lot of demonstrations. I like to keep it in the very pragmatic frame. So if I'm teaching something and I say, oh, my body can do this, or I'm doing this with my flesh or my fluids or my chi or whatever, I often invite people to put their hands on and feel that motion. And again, over the years, I've had so many people come up and go, oh my God, it moves. Yes. Or, oh, I never expected it to be that much. And it's like, well, when we say internal movement, we actually mean something inside the body. And I think there's a lot of schools, and they're still in this, as I was the first school I joined, there's these forms and there's this chi, and they don't have no way to actually fuse that. Yes, it's more of a mental process that they're going through rather than a physical, kinesthetic body sense of something is happening, something is moving. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that felt awareness is amazing. And like you said, a lot of times, there's either something that's totally on the energetic side, sometimes a lot of visualization, or something that's purely physical and doesn't really have much in the way of instruction for the chi. And so I know that you're a great teacher, having been to a lot of your events over the years, at kind of connecting the two together and bridging that gap between what's going on physically and then what's happening energetically, and how the two really dance and weave together. So yeah, I mean, I've had a peek at the course now, and I love it. It's really great. I think it's some of the best footage that I've seen Energy Arts churn out, and the depth of the teaching is really fantastic. Somebody
Thank you.
Was just asking in the chat, what's different about this course than the training circle, Heaven and Earth, that we had previously done snippets of before. And guys, let me tell you that the depth that this program goes into is way more than anything that's been done on Heaven and Earth inside of the Energy Arts materials to date. We're really excited about it. It's a great course, and Paul's done an amazing job with it. Just so you know, we did post the link to more information about the course here in the chat to the right. So if anybody wants to take a look, it's just kind of over here. We'll post it from time to time. All your questions, definitely bump it down, which I'm happy about. That's great. Keep them coming. But if you guys want any information and a link that you can click to get more info, it'll be in the chat as we go along. So we had some other folks asking, some meditators, who have also have Qigong practices. What is the benefit of doing Heaven and Earth Qigong for one's spiritual practice? How do the two dovetail with meditation?
Okay, there's a few things here. First, I would say is the way that it releases the nerves. Because Heaven and Earth works through the layers of the body, it releases the nervous system layer by layer by layer until you get all the way in. And when you actually get that happening in your system, your mind space is very relaxed. And from my understanding of meditation, if your mind is not relaxed, it's not focused, then you will have a hard time achieving any goal in meditation. And then there's these specifics about cleansing the brain. When people meditate, when people think a lot, when people are on computers a lot of blood and chi gets drawn into the brain and it stagnates in the brain. And so this is a really big thing. And the process of cleansing the brain within the macrocosmic orbit of heaven and earth, it trains you to get the blood flow and the chi flow back out of the brain and into the body. From the physical body's perspective, the brain gets the primary access to nutrients, blood, and chi. So if you overuse your brain, and this is something that a lot of people get into in meditation, long meditations, they start getting in their head a lot, then these resources get pulled into the brain. The Chinese call it the brain eats the body. And other functions in the body reduce. And so getting the blood and the chi out of the brain into the body and recirculating it around is important. It gets rid of the stagnancies. And it allows you to focus much deeply, much more clearly, and for longer periods of time.
Great. Yeah. So it's a great way to augment a meditation practice by allowing the brain itself to gain a greater circulation and cleansing through the movement.
Sure. And once you've got those circuits open from your heaven and earth practice, you can implement that technology without having to physically move the body whilst you're in meditation through breathing practices. And those breathing practices are also within heaven and earth. So again, this is another example of how you embody something through one piece of work like heaven and earth, and then in your meditation, you can ignite those flows and you can allow the body to circulate the blood and chi accurately, properly, and efficiently is the correct word. And to make sure you don't get this stagnation, this build up in the brain, which basically will put you to sleep. And a lot of people have problems in meditation because they fall asleep. Yeah, they're there for a minute and then they're gone. And then they come back again. Yes?
Yeah.
And if there's one thing I understand about meditation, it's you achieve a hell of a lot more if you're continuously focused than if you're dipping in and out of focus.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we mentioned a lot about the rhythmic nature of heaven and earth and the way it works with the natural rhythms inside the body. There's something called pulsing that's pretty unique to heaven and earth, or at least the way that heaven and earth uses pulsing. Can you explain a little bit about what pulsing is inside of the heaven and earth Qigong set? Okay.
So from here now, really what we're starting to get into is the subject of the three main layers of the body, the soft tissues, the fluids, and the chi. And when you go to pulsing, you're actually starting to directly activate the fluid within the joints. It's one of the 5 major fluids, along with blood, cerebral spinal, synovial, and lymph. And when you start to activate the fluids in the joints and you start to pulse the joints, which is basically an open and closing rhythm that remains well within the 70% range of the body's function. If you take it beyond 70%, you go into hard stretching of the body's tissues. Now, a joint is held together by ligaments. So you have bones, you have the ligaments. Inside the joint, you have something called the synovial fluid. And the synovial fluid is what lubricates the joint and allows the joint to move smoothly. Now, as you age, the amount of synovial fluid you have in the joint reduces. And so when you start to pulse, what you do is you activate the synovial membrane on the inside of the capsule of the joint, and that secretes more fluid into the joint. And when you get more fluid into the joint basically is suspended in a healthy open position. That stops wear and tear. And that's like the beginning phase. So when the pulse comes online, it also starts to melt the nervous system on a profound level. And therefore, it will start to allow you to get deeper access to all the previous soft tissue work. So when I say soft tissue work, I mean bending and stretching, turning and twisting the soft tissues. And these are the two main ways you move your body. You bend and you stretch your limbs, and you turn and you twist your muscle groups to create rotations of your bones. And these two are like I said, these are the primary methods of moving the human body in Qigong. And then you're still using your muscles to a certain degree. Once you get under the muscles, you see your joints are below the layers of soft tissue. So once you get into the pulsing of the joints, it starts to melt the nerves in the tissues, and the tissues literally drop open. So quite often we would say that the bend and stretch and the twisting techniques are yang, and the pulsing techniques are yin. And the pulsing technique is incredibly yin. And if you manage to pulse and unify all the joints in the body, what will happen is you will have a profound level of relaxation come into your system. And for every layer of depth you get into that relaxation, all the fluids of the body circulate stronger, the qi circulates stronger, and then you start to produce more qi, you start to develop your energy, and you start to be able to bank more energy from your practice. Now, in the course, we take you through the bulk of the joints. I think the only two we left out was the jaw and the spine, and that's because you require incredibly refined understanding and ability with the pulsing before you go to those. But all the other joints are in the body: the feet, the ankles, knees, hips, shoulders, elbows, hands, wrists, and rib cage. And once that comes on, the entire skeletal frame starts to pulse in a rhythmic pattern within the physical movements of heaven and earth.
And that just works its way all the way through the body, like all the way deep into the organs and everything else.
Absolutely, because you see, once you get the synovial fluid activated in the joints, once the joint pulsing starts to generate this really deep level of relaxation, all the fluids of the body start to circulate stronger. And those referred pressures from the pulsing will start to go deeper and deeper in until you start accessing the organs themselves.
Gotcha. And I mean, if you can, heaven earth is kind of one of those practices, you can do a lot of it or you can do a little bit of it. It's kind of one of those things that just will fit into your day to day as needed, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you can do heaven and earth in a very small space. We have a little joke. It's like, it's the one you can do in the telephone box. Okay. All other practices require more space, but heaven and earth, I mean, literally, if you've got a couple of square meters, you can do it, and you can do it comfortably. And it's something you can just do half a dozen rounds. And it generally takes, depending on the speed of the practitioner, somewhere between half a minute to a minute to do one repetition. And therefore, you can do half a dozen repetitions in a very short space of time, and you will feel what that does to you. If you put in more time and more effort, and you do 30, 40, 50, 100 rounds of heaven and earth, it will have an incredibly greater effect on you. And so you can play it to your time, space restrictions in your reality. And I know people that do it 2 or 3 times a day whenever they get into a stress scenario. I had one client in London, and he was in the financial markets, and he would get this incredible pressure in his head and tension, and he would feel like he's about to lose it. He would trot off to the disabled toilet, do a dozen rounds of heaven and earth, ground himself, get the blood out of his head, and go back to his work. And he said that he could be doing that 2 or 3 times a day just to stop himself going mad. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm glad we didn't film this particular program in the loo. I think that it was better to. Yeah, not as good a backdrop, I think, as what we chose for the program itself. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Speaking of the program, a couple folks are asking if there's any sort of written text that might go along with the program. And this is kind of one of the big things that we wanted to talk about tonight is that I believe there is a book that is also on the way. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we spent about 18 months putting together a text. It's quite an in-depth, long text. And I think that this is going to be an ebook, yes? And it's going to be offered to the people within this program only in the beginning. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, from what I've been told by the office, it's that folks who are involved in the Heaven and Earth Qigong online program are going to get first crack at the Heaven and Earth book, which is called Heaven and Earth Qigong, Heal Your Body and Awaken Your Chi, just like the webinar this evening. And that is hopefully going to be available right about January 15th. And it's going to be a very nominal cost. I think Amazon might make you charge something for it. It'll be available there for a couple bucks, something that's next to free. And it's going to be a great text. I've waited for a really long time to have a reference text for the Heaven and Earth program. So I think that this will be a really great adjunct. Paul is a self-professed dinosaur, so I don't think we could have gotten you to do an online program if you didn't also do a book to go along with it. I think that's your preferred method. So if you could talk just a little bit.
Yeah, well, for a start, the book was the first thing. And running through the book, I went back and forward with Bruce many times, clearing up pieces and making sure it was a very balanced program that we were putting out. And we did the book first because that gave the structure that we were going to teach through the program. And so we can say that the book and the program go together like a hand in a glove. The advantage of the book, of course, is it gives a lot more background and a lot more of the principles and the reasons why we do things the way we do within Heaven and Earth. Whereas the program is much more of you can see the three-dimensionality of Heaven and Earth and all of those exercises. But all the pulsing work and all the exercises for lengthening, all the shoulder blade work, which is quite immense in Heaven and Earth. It's all in both the book and the program. And so they are designed to be put together and work back and forth. So you can check things within the book. And if you want to see more detail about how the actual movement is created with the Heaven and Earth, you can watch the videos. So I'm quite pleased with the way it dovetails.
Yeah, that's great. That'll make it a lot easier for people to use as a resource for sure. And I just want to remind everybody that if you're enjoying the webinar, again, thank you for joining us. It's great to see all of your comments. I'm getting to a few as I can. I know that there are a bunch, so I'm sorry if I'm not getting to all your questions right away. But thanks for putting them up there, and please do keep sending them. I want to remind everybody that there's a link in the chat to the program itself that will take you to the 8-week online series. And just remember, even though it's 8 weeks worth of lessons, this is enough material to take you through 2 years or a lifetime of study. There's a lot in there, and it can be a wonderful starting point if you're just getting rolling and looking for a good start in the right direction, or it can be wonderful as an advanced practitioner to deepen your understanding of your Qigong and your Tai Chi, your Bagua, whatever it is you practice now. So if you already have an established practice, it's a wonderful supercharger to kind of help you explore those practices even deeper. So go ahead and click on that if you want any more info. And in the meanwhile, keep asking us questions. So Paul, what is the real difference between, and I think you've gone into this a fair bit, but I think let's just circle back around. What's the difference between just a regular Qigong set and a truly internal practice? What is it that we're really studying here?
Well, if you look at the classic definition of Qigong versus Neigong, Qigong is more about the surface meridians and the surface chi of the body, and Neigong is more about the layers that take you into your core. And so if you're looking at a normal, regular Qigong system that's out there, quite often they will run Qi through one meridian or a pair of meridians in one move, and then in the next move, another pair, and so on and so forth. Dragon and Tiger, to some degree, works in this way. I think Dragon and Tiger is a very good way of doing the outer meridian work, because they only take 7 exercises. Dragon and Tiger requires 7 exercises to do it. Some Qigong sets are out there with 120 to run through the meridians of the body. But Heaven and Earth, it starts with the outer meridians, and then it works in. It does the etheric field work as Dragon and Tiger does. In fact, Dragon and Tiger is a piece of the Heaven and Earth work. It's a splinter practice of Heaven and Earth. And so when you get past the very basic level of Heaven and Earth, now you're starting to work in through those layers, through the muscles, the fascia, through the ligaments, into the joints, into the spine, into the organs. And in order to do that, you really need to be taken through the process that builds and integrates each of those pieces and each of those layers. So the first level of integration is the arms, the legs, and the spine, the 5 bows, as we call them, having those come online and unify. And then the second level is from the skin through to your core, through to the organs. And that's for both the physical body and the chi body. From the chi body perspective, you start with the etheric field and the wei chi, the meridian lines, and then you start working in through the layers, through the muscles, through the ligaments, through the bones, and into the core of the body. And so the idea is to wake up all of you. And so this is why Heaven and Earth has always been, it's always had this phrase: one part moves, all parts move. If one part of your body is in motion, every other part of your body is in motion. And that starts with, oh, well, my hands move in, so there should be movement in my foot. My elbows move in, so there should be movement in my knee, and so on and so forth. But then it goes down to every muscle, every tendon, every ligament, down to every cell in the body is engaged in the motion, one way or another.
Wow, just a total integration.
Yeah, this is why it becomes a very advanced practice. It's not just, oh, you know, it's got a few things in there. It literally gets everything inside of you, from the physicality and the chi, active and online. And of course, when you have that, and then you integrate that into your internal arts, now your internal arts can do a hell of a lot more. Yes?
Absolutely. So we have several people on here who are already energy arts practitioners. They do energy gates, they do Dragon and Tiger, and they're interested in how Heaven and Earth dovetails with those practices, if they need to change anything about the way they're practicing the other things, or what benefit they might see from adding Heaven and Earth into their practice.
Yeah, this is quite a big question, because there's various ways you can come at this. But first of all, apart from the sideways weight shift and the turning of the torso, everything in energy gates is in Heaven and Earth. Everything in Dragon and Tiger is in Heaven and Earth. So the first thing you'll do is you'll start to integrate the material that you've already learned in those practices. That will start to fuse into the Heaven and Earth movement and become one piece of work. And then you'll start to work on the layers that aren't in energy gates, and they're not in Dragon and Tiger. But the interesting thing is this: everything's a circle in our work. So if you do embody the deeper layers within Heaven and Earth, you will notice when you go back and you practice your Dragon and Tiger or your energy gates, some of that material will naturally come online within those other sets. And at the end of the day, if you're looking at the long-term view, eventually all the Neigong is available and alive in all movements. It's just that each set has specific material that it ignites. It naturally brings it alive. It's in tune with itself. Heaven and earth is the wood element, and the wood element governs your muscles and your soft tissues. So when you go to heaven and earth, the way that you do bending and stretching and turning and twisting of the tissues is quite different to how it's done in energy gates and dragon and tiger. And it takes it further. It takes it deeper into the body. It wakes up all the layers of those tissues in the body, not just some of them. And therefore, when you achieve that level of training, you can't stop it coming alive in the other material.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah,
It's
no
just
matter what
gonna
you
naturally.
practice.
Yeah, I mean, you literally have to stop it from happening if you were to choose to do that. But since we're working towards integration, that wouldn't be the best thing to do.
Yeah, no, not at all. So a lot of what you're talking about, it's interesting because I've been on both sides of this. It's very inspiring to think about the depth that you can go to with the set. And then there's also this one layer that feels kind of intimidating about, you know, just how much is in there and how you might actually gain the sensitivity to feel so deeply in the body. But I know that as you practice, a lot of times it's more of a natural evolution to be able to feel more and more minute places inside your system. So maybe if you can just talk to folks a little bit about how someone who's beginning starts to deepen that awareness where these become felt realities instead of just kind of mental abstractions.
Okay, yeah. Well, this is now we're down to, are you becoming a juggler? Because one of the problems is when you know, oh, there's these 12 things or these 8 things that I'm meant to be doing within this practice, the mind jumps from one to another whilst you're going through your form. And this is very common. We call it juggling because when you juggle, you don't hold on to any ball for very long whatsoever. And the mind doesn't hold on to any particular Qigong thread or any particular body part for very long at all. So what happens is you just jump around all over the place and you don't actually generate integration. You create disintegration. So however, if you were to practice a piece, a certain something, a layer, yes, let's just take bending and stretching. You just practice bending and stretching the soft tissues within heaven and earth, and you practice that for a few months. It would become alive. You would connect the body up at that level of the game. And you would circulate fluids and chi at that level of the game. And yes, you would get benefit. You'd get good benefit from doing that. And then when that becomes embodied, you are now on autopilot. And when your body goes onto autopilot and those specific techniques are working in the body without having to think about them, now your mind space is free to focus on the next piece. And then let's say you go for the open and closing material. Well, to open and close every joint in the body will take time. And most people start with the hands and the wrists because you have flexibility, dexterity, and you have good contact. You're familiar with feeling that part of your body on a very regular basis. And so it's very easy to get the pulsing in that part of your body. And then over time, the other joints come online. And it takes time to get every joint in the body alive. And so for some months, you should focus on that aspect of the work and look for what is pulsing, what isn't pulsing. And then you start to integrate the pulse of the body as a unit, and then the whole skeletal frame starts to pulse. And of course, each pulsing joint amplifies the effect in each other joint. So once you get all the joints pulsing and integrated, the whole skeletal frame starts to pulse as a unit. That amplifies the chi, it amplifies the relaxation effect, it amplifies the blood circulation and the other fluid circulations in the body. And then that becomes embodied and you don't have to think about it. The issue comes and you try to do it in a weekend. Yes, you try to do everything in a weekend. Well, now it becomes a stress scenario because you're trying to hold together way too much material. So I've completed 3 decades of practice of heaven and earth. I still have a ways to go. Yes, And so all I can say is you just have to be patient. It is better to do one thing well, because that will give you benefit. And if you do a lot of things poorly, you generate stress responses in the body, and you don't integrate your system at all. And so all I can say is, yeah, go into the program layer by layer, do the 8-week overview, get an idea of what's in there, and then go back to the beginning and start working. And if you're at a particular level that you've already got some of this material down, look for your holes, look for the spaces that aren't alive. Follow that principle of one part moves, all parts move. So your feet don't move physically in heaven and earth, but due to the stretching, lengthening, and the pulsing techniques in heaven and earth, the feet are constantly moving. Most people, when you watch them, their feet don't move. And then when you get the feet moving in heaven and earth, and the legs moving in heaven and earth, the legs and the feet generate much more power than the upper body does. Mm. And most people focus on the upper body. Now, I'm here in Western China. I've been down the park the last couple of mornings, you know, and I've been watching. And it's like, there are good practitioners out there, but honestly, most of them aren't that great. They're getting the basics together, and yet they're every morning they do their practice, they get great benefit from it. And I think we just don't really understand the depths of it. And so you think you need all of it to actually get somewhere, and you don't. You need a piece of it to work well, a piece of it to be integrated into your system well.
And what you're saying kind of reminds me of some of the things that I see popping up in the chat. I mean, we're getting a lot of questions about individual health problems or areas that people would like to address, whether it's, you know, their spine or an organ issue or a joint issue or their lungs or their heart or any of these separate things. But just like what you're saying in the practice about just getting the whole thing integrating and moving together, as soon as you're getting those fluids moving through your system and balancing, you're kind of addressing the whole system, all of these different things at once. So it's not that you're going to do something specifically for your lungs or specifically for your heart or your knee. It's that as that starts to take over, it just upgrades the whole system and creates a vitality inside the whole body.
Absolutely. Now, if we look at the old system in China, right, during the Cultural Revolution, a lot of the old lineages were lost, and a lot of doctors were lost. So they had a health crisis. And so what happened was, the people that went to the doctor, if they had, you know, regular issues, if they did not have a life-threatening issue or something that was really wrong with them, they were basically given a card, and that card was a 6-month calendar. And they were told to go to the local Tai Chi Qigong practitioner down the road, not someone at a high level, just the local guy, and daily go there and get their card stamped to say, yeah, they went to class, they did their practice. And after 6 months, if their ailments continued, they had then the right to get an appointment to see a doctor. What they found was 60% of all these issues were cleared up with just regular practice of basic level Qigong and Tai Chi. That's 60% wiped off the board. And then the other 40%, they went into specifics, and then they would go to the specific branch of medicine that they required help from. But the point I'm making here is, you don't have to necessarily go, oh, I've got to do this in this particular way for my lung. In the beginning, do the practice, because you might find it not only clears up that specific something, but it also clears up these other things in the background that are not really a big issue today, but they're kind of niggling you in the background. And then once you've spend 6 months doing that. Once you've seen what is cleared from the body and what remains, now you go to specific, because now you have something you need to focus on. Yes? And so I get this a lot in my classes and private lessons. People come to me for a specific something, and I basically prescribe the same stuff for various ailments again and again and again, because it's more about how the body functions as a whole. And it's just, that's the weak link in their system. So that's feeling the pressure, the tension, the stress, the load. Yes.
Yeah.
And heaven and earth is deep enough to engage everything. And therefore, it will naturally rid the body of the tensions. It will open up the tissues. It will circulate the fluids. It will generate more qi. And it will fix a lot of the issues just through regular practice.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you mentioned going to a local practitioner to get your card stamped for 6 months and learning some of these practices in person. I want to let folks out there know that in addition to the online courses, this material is of course taught live in seminars throughout the world by Paul, by Bruce Frantzis, our teacher with Energy Arts. I think you're going to have a Heaven and Earth event that you'll be a part of instructing, along with a few other senior instructors this summer at our center in Longmont, Colorado. That's going to be in mid-July. You guys can always feel free to go to energyarts.com and see our events that are coming up. So I just want to let you know that this online course is both for people who can't get to a teacher, and excuse me, my voice is going a little bit. Folks who have trouble getting to a teacher, and also folks who already study this material and really would benefit from having a reference, who have that that reference point for their home study to augment what they're learning from a teacher in person. And so it's the best of both worlds. If you can't get to a teacher, you still have access to very high quality material that can take you very far. And if you do have access to a teacher, then you can augment that practice with a reference here in the online program, and also with the book. And if anybody had not yet joined in on the chat before, we were announcing the book tonight, that those who are joining into the program are also going to get first crack at an ebook on Heaven and Earth. This has been a long time in the making. Lots of effort has been poured into making this a reality. It's one of the most detailed references of any of the materials that Energy Arts has put out at any point in time. And the name of the book is Heaven and Earth Qigong, Heal Your Body and Awaken Your Qi. We're expecting it to be out January 15th. It's going to be next to nothing for those who are in the course. I believe it's just a couple bucks. And we'll have more information for you about that as it develops. But we're really excited about how the book and the online program dovetail, as well as how our online programs dovetail with the ability to train in person with our other teachers here in the Energy Arts system. And then you have other opportunities that are coming up too, I believe, in other parts of the world this coming year through the Tai Chi space in London, England. And you can always search the web for more details about Paul there. So we're going to start kind of tying up the webinar here pretty soon, guys. If you have any other questions that you want to put in the comments, please do that. We've had a lot of people asking about breathing. So much of Tai Chi, so much of Qigong, people get very interested in how the breath work is being integrated into what they're doing. Can you speak a little bit about how breath plays a role in Heaven and Earth Qigong?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Heaven and Earth Qigong is where you learn the classic Taoist breathing, the classic Taoist natural breathing process. That which you do when you come out of the womb. The body does a different process within the womb because you're not actually breathing air during that process. And then when you're born, your body shifts into this natural process, and your Heaven and Earth is the correct slot to learn that material. And in the program, we take you through the lower tier breathing, which is basically how to fully engage the diaphragm and how to massage all of the lower organs, and how to increase blood chi circulation from that process. And so, yeah, heaven and earth is the ideal place for you to be learning that.
Cool.
But can I just say, Paul, next year I'm going to be running seminars in London and a retreat in Crete on the heaven and earth, which is basically running parallel to this material that's going out through the program. And Bill Ryan, Craig Barnes and myself are going to be teaching the heaven and earth retreat at the Longmont School for a week. And we have plans for that to dovetail with this program. And the ideal learning scenario is having the online program for you to trawl through the material, see what it is, practice, get it in your body to some degree, and then come into a live event so that you can actually get corrections, tune-ups, and just to get you on track. Yes?
Yeah.
This is
absolutely.
the ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that's been really beneficial for me and others in the past, is to have that that jump start before you get a chance to be in an intensive training, because there's only so much that you can do in a week, and it's amazing how much your body changes. But the more that you come in with, the more you walk away with, if your practice has already gotten to a certain level. And so when people,
for sure. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, well, if I've done this, why do I need to do that? The depth of the material is such that if you know what it is when you walk in the door, your brain isn't trying to work it all out, and you can really focus in on what it is you're trying to achieve. If it's all new when you walk through the door, first of all, you have this cognitive dissonance, because you see how we move the body through Qigong is radically different to any Western sports, gymnastics, or any Western training whatsoever. And you need to get over that hurdle. And so the more your mind is open to the concepts and the techniques that we use when you walk in the door, the more you will get in your system and the more you walk away with.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And we had somebody asking about the yin yang aspect within heaven and earth. If you could just take a second and speak a little bit about the yin and yang aspects of heaven and earth.
Yeah, I mean, they are many. Heaven and earth is the interplay of yin and yang. You could take for a start, in the Qigong, half the Qigong system is yang and half the Qigong system is yin. The lower body is yin and the upper body is yang. The surfaces are split into yin and yang. The pulsing is an oscillation between yin and yang. Yang is opening the joint, yin is closing the joint. Yang bringing energy up the body, yin bringing energy down the body. Yang expanding the energy to the surface of your body, yin sinking the qi deep into your organs. So you see, heaven and earth is basically the application of the interplay of yin and yang energy. And the better you do that, and the more layers you do that, the more you become balanced and integrated. Because if you are overly yang, then you need to balance more with the yin, and vice versa. So going through that process of learning those internal threads and learning the yang and yin aspects of those threads is what allows you to create balance in your system. And when you create balance, balance is the requirement for integration. When things are out of balance, you have no integration. And so, yeah, the whole training protocol within heaven and earth is all about how to open up the yang and yin flows, how to balance them and integrate them on various levels of your body.
Fantastic. So how are you finding China? I can hear a lot of traffic there in the background. Is this your first trip to Asia?
It is, in fact, yes. I've had a couple of trips in the past planned. In fact, 2 years into my training, I had this plan to go to China. That's when I bumped into Bruce, you know, and I'm like, well, why am I going to China? Now all this material is suddenly available, you know? So that was that. And I had a plan when I was 50 to come, and that didn't work out because life was just too hectic at that point for me to do that. And then suddenly, finally, I've got here. And Craig and I are traveling here together, and we're meeting Bill later today. And we're going to have a float around the parks, look at some Tai Chi, and get into the, it's interesting. Let's put it that way. It's a very interesting place.
Man, it sounds great. And it's cool that you're there with some of the other senior instructors to take it all in. I'm sure that's going to be a very cool trip. Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, guys, I just want to point out we're posting that link one more time in the chat over here about the Heaven and Earth Qigong online program. I've had a couple of people in the chat actually say they just purchased it since we've been talking about stuff here tonight or this morning, depending on where you are. And I can't wait to have you guys in the program. I know that Paul has really poured a ton into it. It's one of the most comprehensive and well-produced programs I think that I've ever seen from Energy Arts. So I'm excited to be a part of the program. It's going to be really cool. And I hope that you guys can join us for even more in-depth instruction, Heaven and Earth, than just this taster that you've gotten tonight. And then always remember that we have ongoing programs at our school in Longmont, Colorado. That's an enormous new development for the Energy Arts community. We'll be doing the kind of grand opening around March 1st. We've got a weekend event, February 28th through March 1st there at the center. And the center is very inspiring. It's the first time we've been able to kind of roll out the lineage in a way that hasn't been possible before, that Bruce can teach at a very deep level in person over time. And we're really excited about that too. So lots of exciting things happening inside of the Energy Arts community. Again, if you're interested in this 8-week online series, I hope you can be a part of it with us. And the link is in the chat. If you guys ever want to tie in with us, by all means, send us a message. We have a training forum on Facebook, the Energy Arts Training Forum. And that's about it for tonight, guys. I hope you've gotten some good tidbits. Thank you, Paul, for being so generous with your explanations and so generous with the effort that you put in to developing this great program and book, which I know has been a long time coming. So
thank you.
Thanks a ton for being here.
Yeah, can I just say that you mentioned earlier that I was a techno dinosaur. Well, Craig has been my technical backup. He's sorted me out. Here I am. This wouldn't happen without his help. And also his linguistic abilities with the Chinese. It would be an interesting trip without someone that has the ability to speak Chinese.
Yeah, so Craig is conversation.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. We've known each other a long time, and he's a real good support.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, Craig is actually one of our primary teachers at the school in Colorado, in Longmont, and I'm sure that hopefully a few of the people on this webinar have been in his regular classes that we've been doing over the past several weeks. So Craig is actually based out of Longmont now and is running some fantastic classes for us. So all you guys are great. It's wonderful to have such incredible resources from our senior instructors and such a depth and breadth of knowledge. Thanks again for taking the time. I know you're up early, being over there in Western China to make this happen. I hope you have some good tea today. And thanks very much for joining us, Paul. Thanks very much for joining us, everybody who's on the call. And we'll see you real soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.